Is this a Star Trek Voyager Renaissance or what? Episode 262 of Trekland Tuesdays Live. Boom. With me, Dr. Trek, Larry Nemecek, coming at you right from the heart of Portal 47 through everything Trekland for some clarity, sanity, and the big picture and everything Star Trek. Hey, it's a summer week. Boy, I can sure tell it. Welcome to Trekland Tuesdays Live once again. If you are a regular, to jump in the chat room here and see what's going on. Everybody spout what you feel like spouting off. I'm Dr. Trek. I'm going to talk about a comment here. I've got a little something to say. It feels like kind of a light week. I don't know. Maybe we're due for a little bit of relief after all the big, heavy events and the big, heavy headlines recently. So Strange New Worlds this week was an interesting show, a real thought-provoking show, but it didn't feel like it lit the world on fire compared to the pace they've been setting. Don't miss this week's episode, kids. And make sure you stay all the way to the end, if you know what I mean. Meanwhile, I was distracted a little week. I don't know about yours, but my Twitter, my socials, Facebook, my YouTube, everything blew up, and I realized after a day or two, it was funny, the things that were being retweeted and catching on, I guess you'd say going viral, if you're old school, internet's like, 2012. But it struck me a couple of days ago, it's like everything seemed to be Voyager. Now, when I say everything, and I say Renaissance, we're talking relative here. Nothing's going to compete for the attention that Strange New Worlds has grabbed in our Trek universe, in our Trek sphere here. But it struck me how it was like there was a little bit of for one thing, Roddenberry.com, shared an innocent, just another fun thing, as they do, as everybody does. Voyager out in deep space attempting to decide what way it wanted to go. Like an interstate sign with lanes. One side saying, cut 5 years off your 75-year journey this way, or side route, do a bit of sightseeing, maybe violate the Prime Directive a bit. Haha, it's a little cute bit for Voyager. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people every other day reset seem to jump into this. I was like, okay. And not only did people feel compelled to jump in, people felt in to come in and jump in and debate the Prime Directive and debate what happened in Caretaker and maybe debate other. It was like this simple little meme, little funny haha about the basic nature of Voyager and the way writers follow the Prime Directive or the captains follow Prime Directive or not, and what would make sense to get home fastest. I don't know if you saw it. It's on the Roddenberry account. It's probably been retweeted a million times. It was at least in Twitter. I'm sure it was in Facebook and Instagram. And this was on the 10th. So, a whole 4 days ago, a Friday. Maybe it was a Friday thing. Hit everybody funny on going into the weekend. But I am amazed at how many times it was just retweeted. And then not only that, but how many times it engineered these whole comment threads, one of which I got into, where I repeated I'm so far over it. And I was never to the raving stage of today's trolls and bots. But back in the day, I thought, well, if they really wanted to not violate the Prime Directive, Janeway should just have them back out, grab the Maquis, stick them on her ship, and then back out the way they came. And if that meant tracking down the Caretaker and the Caretaker was in dire straits, do anything you can. Go tech some tech. Anything you can to just back out the way you can. And all the machinations of the Ocampa and getting assaulted by the Kazon and the Caretaker's guilt over his past or his whole people. Remember the Caretaker's actual species name? There's not a trivia quiz today of prize, but you can guess it anyway. The whole thing about the race and the couple that were there, and he lost his female companion or his whatever the gender was, and he's alone atoning for the sins of how they abuse. That's all their thing. And then the Kazon coming in and the planet not having surface water. That's the bigger thing that Jerry and Michael and Rick have to answer for. I know it was subterranean. But if you really interpret the Prime Directive the way it's supposed to be, how many times was the debate about walking away and leaving people to their fate through natural causes, especially if they were, pre-warp, as they were? But that's not what Starfleet captains do. From Kirk on down, they jump in and interfere and do whatever. And it's the whole Prime Directive debate. It's the whole Prime Directive joke and meme, and I know that. But all I've said was, Janeway is arguing that she's got to follow the Prime Directive and do X. Where to me, it always seemed following the Prime Directive was to do why? Get your tail out of there and stop affecting both sides of a situation you walked into, you stumbled into. Actually, didn't stumble into. One of the parties involved is the reason they're there, which is true. Anyway, it's a muddle, but it's always struck me that Janeway got far more, and she could have got her people home. Always felt like they didn't try hard enough to go home with as little a footprint as possible. Was it to the point of running in and declaring yourself not a god? Was it to the point of looking at you Mintalkins and Who Watches the Watchers? Was it to the point of beaming in and showing old home movies of your horrible years? I'm looking at you, Strange New World, Strange New Worlds, and Pike. I mean, and everything in between. That's what happens sometimes. I'm just saying that it was amazing how Janeway went that way to talk about her Prime Directive debate when it should have really been framed, whether she followed it or not, or whatever they were bound to do. And then the cynic would say, well, they wouldn't have a series if they turned around and went home. I know you wouldn't have episodes and movies. I'm just saying. I just always thought, it's the first thing I thought when I read the script 4 months before it aired. I thought, well, this is kind of a fallacy that she's worrying about the Prime Directive over here when it's really about this. But that's Voyager. That's the charm of Voyager. It was much funnier to laugh about the fact that they totally reshot all the location scenes for the Ocampa City because they changed her hair. The hairstyle wedge that she eventually wound up with anyway. Oh, well, the 90s. Things like that never happen again. No, that was funny enough. I just, day after day after day, and it feels like it's been forever, but I guess it's only been 4 days. I saw that thread. People felt like they had to come in or they just commented on the nature of Voyager and writing and TV and the fallacy of trying to have a Prime Directive when no plot, no captain ever followed it. Or people were very straight on the nose about it. But that was one thing. But then, I don't know when it was posted. I guess it was posted the next day. And they've put these out before, but if you're not hooked in at all to YouTube or seeing YouTube shares on your Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, this account, Gazelle Automations, they've done some fun stuff. They did a next generation clip as if it was done in good old Filmation style from 1973. The animated series, the original Star Trek, the animated TAS from 73 and 74. And we all know it's sad that people talk about TAS as in the limitations of, the animation for the day, when at the same time, not visually, but conceptually, Dorothy was pushing that little Saturday morning cartoon to be as not like a Saturday morning cartoon as possible. And when you think about everything from euthanasia to actual death on screen, not your typical Saturday morning fare. It was not Lassie's Rescue Rangers or even the Rescue Rangers. No, it was not Scooby-Doo even. And it certainly wasn't the Brady Kids when you're talking about, licensed content. But TAS unfairly sometimes gets a bum rap for that. And we totally base it on the animation style. But that said, if you remember TAS and Filmation, and if you remember even the Nickelodeon reruns, even before it was all brought out of the Barren Lands and put back on square one, made canon again, so they could sell the DVDs and the Blu-rays and the upreses, about 15 years ago. And ever since then, TAS has had this renaissance and been back under the microscope. And yes, our buds, Aaron and Rick, redid the animation. Still back there? It's back there. The animation guidebook, which has all been great. And a lot of the stories, a lot of the whatever has been debunked. But boy, Gazelle Automation, this is awesome. The TNG edition was wonderful, but I've said the phrase knocked it out of the park so much lately. It's trite. They are wowing the world. I don't know of a fan that doesn't come across this, whether you enjoyed the animated series or it's an eye roller or whatever, but the crossover of doing Voyager in animated style with all the tropes, all the animation shortcuts, even dirty aliased the layer of animation with the shuttlecraft dragging, and you can see some dirty spots behind it. It's amazing. But the way the animations go and the running with the arms up forward, the whole thing. And it's a voice track from a Voyager episode minus the original music with the animated series music cues. That sound, they had like 47 different cues, and after a while you knew all of them. Dum dum dum. Dum 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 dum. Okay, you need to see it. It's a whole 5 minutes 41 seconds. You can find it on Gazelle Automations. It's just Star Trek Voyager, the animated series, and that has melted down the internet. Everybody was talking about that. It's cute because the title card is a copyright Filmation Associates Norway Productions 1996 instead of 73. It's just amazing. You have to go see it. You have to go find it. It's hysterical. But it's the loving care. It's what we can do now. But the loving care of all the tropes of Voyager. The bottom line is, of course, is not about Filmation in that style. The bottom line is the clip they chose, which is, of course, the climax of Threshold. So yeah, you get Chakotay and Tuvok and Neelix, and a couple of random aliens are scattered through the show like they would do on the animated series, which I love. The gray-skinned Andorian from the altered universe of yesteryear. But no, you wind up with the lizard babies or the amphibian babies at the end with the yuck yuck ending. You have to see it. It's such a, well, will bring a smile to your face no matter what is going on in the world. And these days we need a smile. You don't have to have known the animated series. You may just have a vague notion, but you totally get it. And then the amazing thing is, so many people commented in the threads, and when you see it shared online, it almost redeems Threshold. And not that Threshold, I saw someone say one time, if you just didn't have the last 5 minutes of Threshold, it was a very well done spooky horror story. It was a Brannon weird shit special from the best of the TNG days. And it is. It's just that last thing with the lizard babies. And what did Paris and Janeway do here? What are we leaving behind? Thank you, Doctor, for having a process to bring them back to their human DNA, to their genome. But people keep commenting on how maybe if you viewed Voyager and maybe a lot more of the other episodes, maybe a lot more of Star Trek, through that animated series filter, maybe some things could be redeemed. If there was something to be redeemed in Threshold, that last 5 minute bit, this is perfect. And that's what this is, including the knockouts and the whiteouts and the weird space, all the little shortcuts that Filmation had to use. With imagination, though, with imagination. And it certainly was colorful. That's one thing you have to say about it. But it was the early 70s, so, the great animation melting pot. So gang, this has felt like an off week for Star Trek, for me and Star Trek. On the home front, it's been insanely busy. So between those ships passing in the night, it just dawned on me that I don't think it's a week for going deep thoughts. I think it's a week for celebrating, for whatever reason. The franchise gods seem to align, and at least on my feed, apparently, and probably a lot of other people's, we had a little Voyager renaissance this week. I don't know. What did you think? Are there other things in the zeitgeist that I'm missing about Voyager, or the reasons why? I don't know. Again, the Strange New World episode was kind of serious. It wasn't quite as much fun as, well, obviously, as some of the other recent episodes. Even the ones that weren't fun ostensibly had moments. This one seemed very earnest and on the nose, and whoa at the end. Next week we'll have a little bit more levity returning, and boy, you don't want to miss it, as if I had to tell you that. That's my review. That's what's going to pass for my early review. And Stranger Worlds is going to revisit, I should say, one of the Trek tropes that became a meta joke in Next Generation until they themselves did it. Space pirates. So you just make sure you watch it all the way through to the end, okay? For everybody who is watching us later on right now, I wish you could join us live, because we're about to dive into the chat here in a minute. You're seeing us later, and you'll miss that until you can. I have a big trip coming up. We're going back for SoonerCon and our week in Oklahoma, as I do every season. So for the first time since 2019, some of you newer folk haven't seen me do this, but next week we will have Trekland Tuesdays live. On Monday it'll be a special edition of Trekland Mondays live, same warp time, same warp channel. On Monday, look for that. And then the week following, we're going to bump it to Thursday. So next 2 weeks, next week Monday the 20th, and then the week after that it will be on Thursday the 30th. So, having said that, everybody, I'm going to look forward to today's chat. I'm hoping things are going to be a little more lighthearted this week. Lots of heavy stuff going by in the news outside, and a heavy subject last week where we wound up with. I don't know how many of you saw where the show was going. Had any hint? Some people had hints of where it was going, but not to what extent. So thanks for joining me here. Yeah, did it seem like a weird Voyager in the air week for you? Let me know. Let me know. Meanwhile, I want to welcome one of our new Patreons, Andrew Jasimski. Thank you, Andrew, for jumping in. But yes, I do have the TTL Club as my simple Patreon. We have 2 levels. And so I do want to thank once again Diana Hopkins, Robin Wilson, Lawrence Todd, Anne Marie Siegel, Keith Rombach, Justin Porteous, Nathaniel Robinson, Blaze K, and now Andrew Jasimski. Thank you, guys and gals and peeps, along with our live wires. There we go. Rusty Harold, Halbert Goodjohnson, Alan Hohense, J.R. Poole, Byron Bailey, Dave Gregory, Gay Clevin Lindstrom, and Casey Shafsky. Thanks so much, everybody, for coming in and helping us out. Looking for some more growth pangs coming up as soon as I survive these next couple of weeks. If you're interested and you want to help us out a little bit, it's a very simple Patreon. It's $5 or $10 a month. You can throw in more, and some do, but I keep it simple because there's lots going on at Trekland, and I'm just fulfilling it with a shout out. Thank you much. And access to some of our early Portal 47 backstage interviews. Patreon.com/Trekland Live. If you are Vegas bound and you haven't thought about it yet, we only need 6 to make this one day. We've done it before, but of course it's been 3 years. One day trip out to the Valley of Fire on Con Eve, the full day before the con starts on Thursday. I still call it STLV. It's still Star Trek Las Vegas. There was never any implied licensing in the hashtag. So yeah, it's the creation. GeekNationTours.com is where you can go to find out about it, or come to LarryNemecek.com and click on the big button row of tours coming up, because this is Wednesday, August 24th. It's a one day. It's about 7 hours. It's an hour out to Valley of Fire from Vegas. And we leave early because it gets hot in August in the desert. But we come back by 2 or so. So you can recover, and you're good for Con Eve events like Landing Party. Okay, I really urge you to go out there. We've got folks in the chat, I'm sure, today that have been out with us before, much less the big Geek Nation tour coming in July next year. You can look at that all in the same place at my homepage, as well as the Great Bird Origins Tour. This is almost made. It's August. It's the weekend before Vegas, but it's that way because it's the end of the centennial year of Gene's birth on the 19th. 20th and 21st is the weekend. We're going to go to some live places around town. I had some confusing links and information on the page if you went to look at it. It's been cleaned up now. I just need to update the photo, but other than that, it's all good. Rod's going to join us for part of the weekend. We'll go around to the places that made the Great Bird, that made Star Trek. It'll be a different kind of tour. And one thing we will do is, of course, be at the Paramount/Desilu lot on one of the days, and some surprises still to come. There's some souvenir swag that come with it. Check it out if you would at LarryNemecek.com. What else is happening? There's a new Trek Files up because it's Tuesday. If it's Tuesday, this must be Trek Files and 2 for Tuesdays. This week, we are back visiting with the great Michael Westmore again. Not so much on the creative, alien-y, cool side of makeup, on the ups and downs of running a makeup department, starting with a memo from the 60s, and then Mike's memories, expanding it to the 80s and 90s. At the Trek Files on Facebook, where we have the document, as we do every week. Podcast.roddenberry.com will get you to all the Roddenberry podcasts. But of course, Trek Files is available at iTunes and Spotify and Libsyn and yada, yada, yada. Hey, everybody, if you're not aware, you can find me online at Larry Nemecek on Twitter. Larry Nemecek's Trekland. Someday I will update this. Is the YouTube and the Facebook and the Instagram, if you would. Like and subscribe us on YouTube, please, and thank you. Portal47.net, though, if you want to jump in with the Portales for a mini-con all year long, every month on several fronts. That is it, folks. If you're leaving us right now, please stay healthy. Not a week goes by, but I don't have someone in my orbit. 1 or 2 people are still coming down with COVID, so it's still worth guarding against. Do all the things. Stay woke, check your sources, and of course, Trek well, everybody.